This is Awards Buzz. We're here discussing the Oscar shortlisted animated short film Retirement Plan. How are you, John?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Abe.
I just had a chance to speak with the director of Snow Bear, which is also in contention on the shortlist. There's one very big difference between these two films, which is there's no dialogue whatsoever in Snow Bear. And in this film, there is dialogue the entire time. And I feel like so many of these short films, especially animated ones, very often we see images, we don't always hear words. And I was very struck by the fact that this is a full-on monologue the entire time, the likes of, Edward Norton in 25th Hour, that kind of thing. Tell me about your approach and your decision to have this film involve so much fantastic stream of consciousness.
Yeah, it's I kind of broke a few rules making this film, and one of them is show don't tell, because there is a lot of telling in the film. It's a list film, and I think my kind of non-linear brain was excited by the idea of a list structure because it's sort of as you're watching it, it lulls you into a rhythm. You can build comfort in the viewer. You feel like you know where it's going. And then you can very slowly, as a, filmmaker, pull the rug. And just when people think they know where it's going, it doesn't.
Well,
But yeah, it
just
was
by
fun
definition,
to figure that out. Yeah.
absolutely. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah. No, no, no. I was just gonna say, yeah, it's kind of fun to play with that rhythm and sometime up to a certain point, it's kind of cliche. You're seeing what the character is talking about. He's saying, I will hand glide, I will um, learn to play a piece of music perfectly. And then at a certain point, as his sort of self-delusion kicks in, what you're seeing doesn't match what he's saying. He'll say, "I'll move to a town by the sea," but you're watching him arrive in a retirement home, and I will learn how to communicate. And he's on a hospital bed, throwing his food at someone.
Well, just by the nature of you making this film, you are obviously not immediately considering retirement. You are still working and doing that. But how did this film make you think about your own future?
Yeah, like retirement is a bit of a little bit of a construct for somewhere you can put your dreams, where you can kind of shelve them. And I am someone that feels quite kind of time poor, like a lot of us. Um, and I think compared to 30, 40 years ago, we have so much more choice. Um, and it's lovely. We can watch any film, learn any language on your phone, travel anywhere for a pretty cheap flight. But I think with all of this choice, the result is, at least for me, a kind of form of paralysis. And so the film explores this idea of someone that's doing all these things that they feel like they should be doing or that they think will give them some kind of happiness or contentment, but actually doing at the expense of, some inner self-reflection.
Do you expect or have you found a lot of people crying at the end of this film?
I I never expected. I don't know if we were really thinking. We probably should have been thinking about the audience a bit more, but we were, like one thing we didn't do when I watched with an audience is maybe we didn't leave room for uh, laughter. So sometimes the audience would be laughing and they miss a line, but that's just kind of because it's so dense. As you say, it's stream of consciousness. Some of the shots are like less than a second long, and there's over 100 shots. So, um, we didn't really, know how to we kind of played with that. But I think, yeah, the crying and the laughter, I think there is kind of a fine line between those two emotions, and I think Tara Lawal, my co-writer, and I were interested in how closely we could jam, absurdity and kind of sorrow right next to each other. So there's one scene where he's at an orgy, and then that always gets a big laugh because it's quite unexpected. Suddenly it's a cut and he's got no clothes on, and then the next scene he's sitting on his bed crying, and I think humor can be a kind of a nice gateway to stirring the pot of emotions. So in it, we kind of it was a bit of a tonal juggling act, but that was part of the fun of it, really.
I know that any successful short, there's always at least a brief conversation about making a feature, but I don't think I want a feature of this. I feel like this is it, and like it has to be like this. Otherwise, it doesn't, with more time to breathe, it doesn't have the same impact.
No, it's not a trailer for a feature. It's I feel like it's exactly what we wanted it to be, which is this little 7-minute thing. I think what I did discover, my background is typically a lot more complex stop frame animation and live action and things with bigger crews, and this was a deliberate attempt to kind of simplify and strip back and make something that was more emotional, and have the flexibility to be able to really push and pull it. And in the course of making it, the kind of the technical pipeline just made me think about long form. And I'm already speaking to a couple of people about long form series, not related to retirement plan, but using the same kind of technical pipeline. We wanted to get it from script to screen like as quickly as possible, just to try and kind of carry the humor through. Like I love animation, but sometimes I've done that where, when there's like such a long time between the storyboard and the final thing that you sometimes lose a bit of the energy along the way. So we really wanted to keep something deliberately simple so that we could capture that spontaneity.
When I think about Donald Gleason, I think about his American roles, very creepy and Run and The Patient, and then a little bit more endearing than I'd expect in The Paper, but his face is always a very big part of it. So I'm curious how he functioned as a faceless narrator for the film.
Yeah. Yeah. And he looks nothing like the character either. I don't know, probably missed a trick there. But yeah, I think yeah, he has such a, incredible dramatic scope. But even in his comedy or kind of lighter roles, I think you get a sense of this sort of there's always some depth there to his performance. And I think we wanted, I mean, it was a complete shoot for the moon situation. And, just sent an email off to his agent without having any connections. But I did genuinely think it was the only person we could think of for the role, because we wanted someone that could balance that tragedy and that humor. And he was able to really ride that tonal line, which, could have gone completely wrong in the wrong hands, but he's very funny when you meet him in person, very intelligent, and has written, and directed his own work in the past. So he did make a few little tweaks and added a few little questions about, for example, the ending. We had quite a labored ending, and I was, as you get when you finish making a film after a year, you get in the trenches and you're like, you can't see it any other way. But he kind of said, maybe you don't need this like fifth ending. And he's totally right, because I ended the film on a gag. And when we just chopped that off, then suddenly it ended on a much more thoughtful note. And it's a much better film as a result of his suggestion.
Like that. Well, before I let you go, what is one film, a short or a feature, that is really sticking with you this season?
A short or a feature this season? I mean, I did go and see One Battle After Another in the Vista Theater when I was in Los Angeles a couple of months ago, and that was, yeah. I mean, it's predictable. It's probably everyone's answer a little bit, but it was the most fun I've had in the cinema in a long, long time. Mainly because the US audience is just they communicate much more than we do here in Ireland. And I think they'd all seen it before because it was like 10 a.m. on a Friday morning. So you really felt the film at every moment. So I'm dying to see it again. But that's the one that I keep thinking about.
I will say, I think I saw it at something like 10 a.m. on a Friday morning in Los Angeles, but there were only about 10 people in the theater. So I've heard all the praise before and after. I think during the screening, it was more of a solitary experience, but definitely a good choice. So, well, thank you so much, Tom. This was really a pleasure, and I really look forward to seeing not more of this story, but what comes next from you separately.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Abe.